Welcome to this interview in the series Remembering Skiing, La Mémoire du Ski, where we talk to ski pioneers who lived and skied in the Laurentians and who have lived through an important period from the early days of skiing in the Laurentians through right now. And we find out how it was in those days and how it is now and how it has changed over the years that they have been involved. And our guest today is a very special guest. We are talking to a real champion, Lucile Wheeler from Grey Rocks. Nice to have you, Lucile. And Lucile, as you probably know, was the first North American to win a medal in downhill skiing in the Olympics, and was the first Canadian also to win a gold medal at the World Championships. And in fact, it was 2 gold medals and a silver. It's hard to do much better than that. And she was also one of the first ones inducted into the Laurentian Ski Hall of Fame along with Jackrabbit Johansson. So a lot to chat about, Lucile, and thank you for having us at your wonderful chalet here, your home in the Eastern Townships right now. So I guess with all that, having lived at Grey Rocks and where the family home was, I guess you were pretty well earmarked to become a skier and a ski racer.
Yes, I think so. We were very fortunate to be living in that area, and I guess growing up, everybody cross-country skied, and we usually cross-country skied into the area that we were going to alpine ski, so we did both. But how I got into ski racing is in 1938, 2 Austrians came over. One was Hans Faulkner and one was Herman Gadner, and they came to Grey Rocks. And Herman stayed and was director of the Snow Eagle Ski School, which was the name of the school that they had in Austria, probably in German. But one day Herman came to my father and said, when you see somebody that wants to go faster, I think I would suggest that I would enter that person in a ski race. So I entered my first race on Tremblant on my 10th birthday. It was a double downhill.
Wow.
The first downhill was down the St. Bernard Run, which was from halfway down the mountain. And the second downhill was down the old tower trail right from the fire tower. And that was also where first time I met Rhoda and Rona Wurtel, who was also being coached by Herman Gadner.
You had a double downhill, imagine that. And I guess the course preparation in those days was nothing like it is today.
No, it was mainly prepared by snowshoers. And of course, it would get rutted up quite quickly, and there was no snowmaking. And
were there any gates, or just
no control gates? No,
just ski, stay out of the trees and make it to the bottom.
If you could, yeah.
So, and I guess you were talking about cross-country skiing, and you were basically, in those days, skiing was skiing. You had the same pair of skis to do both.
That's right.
And in those days, of course, what was it like to train? I mean, when you got your first lessons, there was no real national team. There was no local team. Or was there a local team or a Laurentian zone team?
No.
No?
Not at that time.
We're talking about the late 30s here.
Well, I guess when I started would have been 1945. Okay. And no, we all trained on our own. And there was a very good racing circuit throughout the Laurentians. And most of the downhills even, we had to climb from the bottom to the top for every practice run. Not every area had a ski lift. And many of the competitors came from Montreal, and most of them didn't ski during the week, and many of them took the ski train up and would race. And that's pretty much how Rhoda and Rona did it.
So everybody raced on their own, basically. In those days.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was no organization.
There were ski clubs,
Okay.
and some ski clubs were very helpful.
Supportive,
I think,
yes.
to be hoarse here. Were very supportive. I had the Saint Javit Ski Club, and they were very supportive of me, especially later on when ski clubs weren't as important. I think at one point I was the only member racing, but they kind of kept going for as long as I competed. And the Saint Javit Ski Club always ran the Taschereau.
How did you get to international ski racing from those beginnings, from those modest beginnings? It obviously took a little bit of money to get you out there and a bit of training.
One thing, again, it was fortunate where I lived, so it really didn't cost me that much to ski because
locally, yes.
And but I remember going out to the Canadian Ski Championships out in Norquay in 1948, and my dad and Ernie McCullough and myself went by train out to Banff, and we had to climb the downhill. And first time Ernie and I went up, it was all deep snow, and it was quite steep. It took us a couple of hours to get up to the start.
Norquay, yes.
Yeah,
and Ernie
says to me, and there was a sharp left-hand turn at the end of this shush. So Ernie says to me, he says, I think I know what I'll do. He says, I'll go straight because the snow is going to slow me up. So he took off straight, and the snow didn't slow him up because he got on top of it.
Oh, boy.
So I was sitting there saying, now, what do I do?
And around what time did you get to go to Europe and enter some ski races?
Well, I guess I'd go back a little bit when you were asking me first how I started getting into ski racing in a larger way. Is Herman Gadner was the one that started me, and unfortunately he was killed in an avalanche in spring of 1945 out west. He used to take a group to tour out west when skiing was finished east. So then after that, my father arranged for John Fripp at Tremblant to help me. And then there was also Bob Richardson and Ernie McCullough, part of the ski school, so we kind of all trained together. Mm-hmm. And then for the getting into the international part, I guess the first team I made was in 1952 for the Olympics in Norway. So in 1951, they had Olympic trials. So if you could get to the Olympic trials, and you had a chance to make the team. That's how they did it.
You had to get to the Olympic trials. And where were these Olympic trials, in Canada?
Yes, they were in Banff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then comes 1956. Cortina d'Ampezzo. You show up at the downhill, and lo and behold, you medal.
Yes.
And you become the first North American, Canadian or American, male or female, to earn a medal in downhill skiing.
That's right.
It's never been done before.
No, that's right, yes.
And in those days, of course, there was no internet, there was no direct broadcasting. How long did it take to get that news back home? And
it certainly took a lot longer than today.
Yes, the movie tone, the newsreels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't as quickly as today.
No, but I guess by phone they could get the results out. Yeah.
And what was the reaction in Canada? Do you remember?
I think that Canadians were totally amazed that someone could win a bronze medal in skiing. And on the other hand, they were extremely disappointed because the Canadian hockey team won a bronze medal. They always won the gold medal, except that's when the Russians changed everything.
But you changed things significantly in skiing.
Yeah.
And I guess it was after your successes and after 1958 when you won the 3 medals at the World Championships that the national ski team became a real going concern. I think it was probably your results, your good results, that motivated Canada to form a permanent national ski team.
I would think so, because naturally, after winning an event like that, what is it that oh yes, at the press conferences in Austria and also back here, they had always asked me about a national team because all the other countries had one. And I would push for Canada to have a national team.
Which is a bit what happened anyway.
Yeah.
I remember seeing or hearing about the reception you got when you came back here with the medals. Didn't they have a parade for you from downtown Montreal right up to Grey Rocks?
Sort of. The biggest reception I had in Montreal was when I won the World Championships, because I guess it had been very decisive. And Molson's had a sports show at the time. And I didn't know it, but they brought my coach, Pepe Salvanmo. He's one that we should talk about.
Yes.
Brought him over as a surprise. So following the big dinner in Montreal, we did sort of do a motorcade through the Laurentians and stop at different areas.
Okay.
But thinking, going back, bringing up Pepe's name, is the first time I ever met Pepe was in 1952 at a race in the Russian sector of Austria. At that time it was still all divided up after the Second World War. And then in 1954 we went back for the World Championships in Sweden. And again, Joanne Houston and I went over earlier, and we were at the first big race in Grindelwald without a coach. And Pepe was coaching, Salvanmoser was coaching the Austrian women's team. And he had a division. There was an older group and a younger group. And some of the older ones were very upset that he offered to help us because we, joined the team. So then we got talking with him that we'd be looking for a coach. So he came to us a couple of days later and he says, I'm tired of all this infighting. So he said, I'd be interested to be your coach, and the rest is history.
Okay, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about the Laurentians as a ski region. Lucile, you've spent your early life at Grey Rocks. How did your family was American in the first place and moved up to the Laurentians?
Yes, my grandfather came up from Chazy, New York, I think in the late 1800s, and he started in the lumber business. And fire burnt a lot of the lumber, and also their home was right on a lake, and people from Montreal used to come up and fish and then want to stay over. So finally my family decided, well, why are we giving all this for free? So that's how this hotel started, with the family running it, and became a certified hotel. I think it was 1906.
And when did skiing come into to the picture?
The skiing, I don't fully remember, but skiing was always a part of it, especially just the cross country.
Okay.
But I sort of think like around 1936 is when they started having instructors, and usually they were European instructors to begin with. I think Réal Charette was one of the first to be a non-European to be a director of the ski school.
And of course the Snow Eagle Ski School was very famous. People came from all over the place to do the early season ski weeks, particularly.
Yeah, well, actually, when John Fry was editor and owner of
Skiing?
it was a ski magazine, yeah, and they the Snow Eagle Ski School 2 years running was voted the best ski school in North America.
And
But when I first remember it, like with Real, there were 5 instructors, and that was a big school.
oh,
And
yeah.
I have a picture in my den, and there are about 50 instructors in it.
Yeah, that really changed. And
Yeah.
I think Grey Rocks also invented the ski week for American skiers.
What was very interesting, I went with my father and Ernie McCullough and Rhoda Wordle, and I think it was John Clifford out to Sun Valley. And we also went to Aspen first, and we went by car. And I can remember Sun Valley had a partial ski week. It offered like lessons and ski lifts for a week. And my father put together the idea of including the room and board for a ski week. And Real was very helpful in putting that all together too. And he used to go down into the States every fall and on a speaking tour. And so, yes, I would say Grey Rocks was the first to have a full ski week.
And also, Grey Rocks was one of the first with snowmaking.
Yes,
And
yeah.
early and late season, they were the dean of skiing in the Laurentians. First ones to open, last ones to close.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there used to be a license plate, I guess, that said I skied Grey Rocks in November.
Oh, yeah.
And for American Thanksgiving, I mean, you couldn't find a room or...
No. And how it was in the old days. How many, which were the popular ski resorts in those days? Of course, you came from Grey Rocks, but you traveled all through the Laurentians.
Yeah, well, I guess being close to Grey Rocks would have been Tremblant. And then there was St. Agathe and St. Sauveur, St. Margaret, Piedmont.
Piedmont,
Yeah, yeah, and Mont Gabriel. And there were races every weekend at one of the resorts. And it'd either be a downhill and slalom. I don't think giant slalom hadn't been, when I first started, hadn't been.
Laurentian Ski Hall of Fame and Museum. You were among the first, as I mentioned. You were the first group with Jack Rabbit Johansson. How did that feel when you were inducted with him?
That was very definitely an honor. And it's one of my most special honors to be the honorary patron. And I am very supportive of the museum and the Laurentian Hall of Fame. For one thing, because so much history is from the Laurentians, and it's so important to preserve it. And I give all my compliments to all the volunteers up in that area who have made the museum what it is today.
Yeah. And I'm sure everybody is tickled pink to have you as the honorary president, honorary patron of the museum, because, you know, as a champion of skiing and as somebody who's lived in the Laurentian all your life, I mean, we couldn't have a better honorary president. And on this note, I would like you to propose to everybody a toast to winter.
Okay, a toast to winter.
A toast to winter. Let it be a good winter coming up, as it has been for 80 some odd years?
Yes, 84 years.
84 years
Yeah.
skiing, and still looking forward to this coming winter. Thank you very much, Lucile Wheeler, and wish you a nice winter and a nice long life.
My pleasure.
Thank you.